Hey guys, Ojabine here, bringing you guys our NCP Wi-Fi Season 4 draft analysis. Yes, we are back. NCP is a league ran by my good buddy John Jr. I participated in Season 1 of NCP Wi-Fi. It was actually the first ever league I uploaded to this channel. So NCP is a place that's near and dear to my heart. We ended up making semis in Season 1, and then in Season 3, this most recent season we played, and it wasn't our best showing. I won't lie to you, it really wasn't our best showing. We missed out on playoffs. I don't even remember our record, man. It was not great. And in general, our Gen 8 Wi-Fi record has not been up to snuff, at least to my standards. I'm not happy with how I've performed as a whole, and I really want NCP to be the league that I bounce back and I really get back to form, at least on Wi-Fi, because on Showdown this gen I've had a lot of success. Haven't been able to find it on Wi-Fi yet, but I think this is like a perfect team for me to find it. It's something I'm very comfortable with. This is probably the most me team I've drafted on Wi-Fi this gen, in my personal opinion. I'm not trying anything crazy. I'm using what I know I do best with and the type of team that I know I'll play the best with, and hopefully we'll be able to do well. Definitely go check out all the coaches in the description below. They will all be linked right down there. And if you're new here, this is your first time catching one of my videos, you're running right over from the draft stream that I helped D-Ray host, be sure to drop a sub. It's really easy, it's completely free, and it helps me push towards my goal of 400, which at least at the time of recording this, like a week prior, I haven't hit. So if you want to help me push towards my goal, that would be absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you for it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump off into the draft. So going into NCP Season 4, I didn't have the best pick. It wasn't a great pick for me overall. I believe I was 7th overall in the order. I want to say 7th or 8th in the order, and I say this in every draft analysis, but my philosophy going into a draft is always going to be grab the best thing that's available on the board and build from there. And when it got to me, I was kind of scared because I was like, man, I have a pretty shitty spot. Great coaches who know how to draft around me. I don't know exactly what I'm really going to be able to grab in this spot. And it came around to me, and I saw that Latios was actually still sitting on the board, and I jumped at the opportunity. Latios is an amazing Pokemon on its own. In Gen 7, it was an absolute phenom, just raining Dracos down like it's nothing. This thing is so ridiculously strong. It gets access to great setup options on Calm Mind and Dragon Dance. It has reliable recovery and Roost. It gets defog, it gets screens, it gets Memento support. So it's a great overall Pokemon. And this gen in particular, I think it's much better despite losing the access to Z-moves, that being because despite no hidden power being in the game, it got access to Aura Sphere in the DLC, and it got access to Mystical Fire coming back into the decks and stuff like that. And that is absolutely game-changing for Latios. The two things that Latios struggles with is one going to be Fat Berries, but even then you can push through a lot of those just with your Psychic Stab and being able to just, hit them very hard on that side. With that side of your stab, but it's also going to be steel types. Steel types, do well against both your stabs, and previously it was either Hidden Power or Earthquake, which is, two decent, pretty decent options. But now that Lottie gets Aura Sphere and Mystical Fire, this thing doesn't have pivots anymore. This thing can just rain down Dracos freely. You go into your Ferrothorn, predicting that, and I as I go for a Psychic, it doesn't matter because the next turn I'm going for a Mystical Fire and I'm blowing you backwards. So I really like Latios. I think it's a phenomenal Pokemon to build around. Great 110 speed tier as well, so it's nice. We just got to get some a little bit faster, get some a little bit slower, and we should be vibing from there. And we just kind of need to support a team around making sure Lottie can succeed in its breaking and cleaning prowess with like a potential Scarf set and stuff like that. But yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on into round 2. Now, round 2, I was very happy to see that Excadrill lasted to me. Now, another thing I'm very comfortable with, and that's going to be kind of what this this draft analysis you're going to see. There's very few mons that I have on here that I haven't tried before and I haven't loved using before. And one of my big comforts is Excadrill and Excadrill Sand in particular. Now, I've used Sand a couple times. I've had great success with it. I've actually used it very recently in a Natdex Showdown lead called Crash that my good buddy Bash and Crypto, they both run. And I have Urshifu Sand, and I love Sand plus a Pokemon that doesn't appreciate, bulky steals, bulky fairies being around. And what does Excadrill do? It breaks bulky steals and fairies for Latios to really pop off and go crazy, which is awesome. Lati can switch into pretty much any one of Excadrill's weaknesses. It pivots into fire types, it pivots into ground types, it pivots into water types. And again, you can't really sleep on Lati's bulk. It's still a legendary mon. It's not as bulky as Latias, but it's still definitely bulky enough. This gives me great spin support, so I can always get away with the hazards, as well as that speed buff, so which I think is also really cool for Excadrill. The fact that when it is spinning away those hazards, it's doing a little bit more damage this gen. To where it's not just, completely a wasted move, but it's also boosting your speed. So some matchups, you may not even need sand. You could be Mold Breaker with spin, still outspeed everything, and just rip through the levitate mons that want to try and take you on, like the Rotom Washes of the world, which is obviously just really cool. It gives me a rocker, it gives me a potential cleaner with Swords Dance, and potential setup options, obviously Earthquake and Iron Hand ripping through a lot of teams, and then good coverage in like Rock Slide and X-Scissor and things like that to hit grass types and things, and flying types that would potentially take on your stabs already. Excadrill is a phenomenal Pokemon. It's a really malleable Pokemon to where I can bring it offensive some weeks. I can bring like a fatter spin set another week. Mold Breaker with Scarf, or Sand Rusher, just plenty of different options. Absolutely love Drill, and I think it pairs phenomenal with Latios, especially if you do secure that Sand option later on. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to using Excadrill this season. Next up was Big Scolipede in round 3. Now in that on that Sand team with Excadrill that I have in Crash, I actually have Scolipede as well, and it's a Pokemon I've used a million times at this point. I can't really count. It's a Pokemon I have I'm very comfortable with, and I've had a lot of success with. I think the spikes option with mons like Lati and Drill that want a clean late game without potentially having to set up like a Scarf Lati, or a what do you call it, like a Scarf Excadrill, or even just a Sandrush Excadrill that doesn't have the setup opportunities that in my other matchups, is obviously absolutely phenomenal. So spikes and T-spikes, it gives me a grounded poison, which is awesome, and it's a great potential endgame cleaner in itself, with access to Swords Dance to boost its own physical attack, and Mega Horn and Poison Jab plus like EQ/Aqua Tail, absolutely ripping through most teams. It can really push through a lot of cores. It's a great endgame cleaner. So say I want Lati and Drill to break for Scolipede, I think it's really a viable option. It gives me a mon that's faster than those base 110s. So if I'm playing opposing 110s that are going to be running that max speed tier to tie my Latios, I have Scully to potentially revenge them as well, and after Protect, I can even revenge Scarfed ones as well. So that's obviously really cool. And it's just overall a really solid mon for my team. It breaks fairies just like Excadrill for Latios. So again, the name of the game is going to be breaking fairies, and on top of that, it also breaks the fat grasses that Excadrill doesn't appreciate. Lati can beat most of those, but having something that just immediately threatens it with a stab, opposed to a coverage move or having to set up or something like that, is obviously phenomenal, and the hazard support is going to be awesome as well in most matchups. So Scully fits phenomenally with Drill, and it pairs pretty nicely with Latios as well. Oh, and not only that, it also breaks through the fat darks that Lati hates, which is one of the things that Excadrill doesn't necessarily like do off rip. It definitely can't break through a lot of dark types, but Scolipede breaks through them off rip with its strong stab, Mega Horns, and things like that, as well as bulky psychics that Latios doesn't do. Obviously, Scolipede doesn't want to take those hits, but if they're put in range of the Mega Horn, then that's obviously great as well. So Scully fits great, and I'm looking forward to using it on this team. Round 4, I'm looking at my team and I'm like, ooh, I don't have an ice resist at all on my team. Lati's obviously weak to it. Drill, being my steel type, is actually neutral to it due to the ground typing. Scully obviously is an ice resist too, and I felt like Jellicent was a perfect option for that, because on top of it giving me that that good ice resist, giving me that great bulky water, it gives me a spin blocker for potential extra drill setting up rocks, and Scully spike stacking, which is obviously phenomenal. It gives me a secondary fighting Pokemon check, so I don't have to use Latios defensively in some weeks where I face this very scary physically offensive fighting type. I can go with a Fizdef Jellicent to do so, which is obviously really nice. It gives me a potential Trick Room option for some mons that you'll see later on my team, which is obviously dope. It gets access to Recover, to obviously keep itself healthy, as well as Strength Sap, which is a pretty cool niche option. I think that Recover is a little bit more reliable in most matchups, but Strength Sap is obviously really cool for potential scary physical threats, and not only recovering your own health, but keeping them weak and making sure they're not doing enough damage back to you to really warrant them ever beating you or anything like that. It gets access to Taunt, so it's a great stall breaker with its pretty mediocre speed tier in what I believe it's either 60 or 65. Let me check really quick. It's 60, which sounds pretty bad, but when you think about it in practice, you're gonna outspeed a lot of fat things that aren't gonna want to run a lot of speed if you do just invest a little bit. So a potential stall breaker set is obviously really cool. And in some niche matchups, I can even go Scarf Water Spout. I can go Offensive Trick Room, a bunch of different options. Jellicent is a bulky water I've used to great success in the past. Oh, and it gives me a water immunity. So that's another great immunity for me. So I really do like Jellicent. I think it fits the team well, and it kind of just patches a little bit of the defensive holes we have right now. You're going to see we're going to kind of start diving into some more bulk and stuff like that as we get along into, you know, these middle rounds and stuff like that. Kind of really rounding off our team and putting us in a good spot against a lot of these scary offensive threats. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into round 5. Now, like I said, we're kind of jumping into a little bit more of the fatter part of the build. And next up, we have Sylveon. Now, Sylveon really does help me out. It gives me that great and, you know, very important typing and fairy. So we round out our fairy dragon steel core, which is obviously super, super awesome. It gives us a dark resist, which we did not have switch into knockoff at all on our team. We got 6-0'd by the move knockoff. So I figured that was pretty important to have, obviously pivoting in and checking those things, checking physically offensive fighting types as well. Again, taking pressure off of Latios so Latios can come in and click buttons and not have to worry about those things, which is obviously really, really great. Hyper Voices off of Pixelate definitely hurt. You can go Nisha, you know, Specs in some matchups. You can go Calm Mind in some matchups. It really can break through some teams, especially some slower, fatter builds, which is obviously really nice. It gives me a Wish Passer to keep things like Excadrill healthy and Latios healthy, and even a Scolipede potentially for like a Boots fan, you know, pretty healthy. It gives me Heal Bell to be a Cleric in order to get some, you know, toxic off of some of my fatter stuff like Jellicent and other members you'll see later on, which is obviously awesome. And it's a fairy that got access to Mystical Fire, and I think that's really, really nice in a generation where hidden power doesn't exist, making sure that our fairy type has access to a move that can hit them. Now, obviously, we're not going to want to stay in on a lot of them, but if we can catch them on the switch, or even if we're faster, that can obviously be, you know, a really, really cool option in itself. So Sylveon's a great glue piece. It's kind of like Jellicent, where it's here to patch up some defensive holes that our first 3 very, very offensive Pokemon kind of leave us with, and play a little bit of support while still having that versatility to go offensive if we really need to, and stuff like that. Sylveon's a mon that I had in APA this most recent APA, you know, main season. Really loved it there, and I've had it in a bunch of other leagues where I've had pretty good success with it, so I'm looking forward to using it again. So round 6 comes along, and another hole that I was kind of seeing in my team is that I don't appreciate a good fairy type. Much like Sylveon, a lot of fairy types do get fire coverage, which means my very offensive and very frail core of Excadrill plus Scolipede really doesn't want to take a lot of them on defensively. They can obviously threaten them out and push them offensively and, you know, revenge kill them, but they don't necessarily switch in. And I think that's really important with Latios, is obviously having a switch into those things, and we ended up going with Moltres right here. Now, Moltres gives me another defogger, which I think is also very important. Right now, our only form of removal was going to be extra spinning and Latios defogging. I'm going to tell you right now, I will run it, but I don't want to ever have to run defog Latios. I think it already has 4 moveslot syndrome as it is in most matchups, and trying to fit defog on it is honestly not only a waste but very tough in a lot of matchups. So it gives me a very reliable defogger. Moltres obviously having access to boots now makes it much more reliable in getting on the field and getting off. It gets pressure and flame body, 2 great abilities. Sub roost sets for Moltres are absolutely demonic. They're really tough to deal with, especially when this thing got Scorching Sands this gen, and I think that's a buff that we should definitely talk about, because one of the things that Moltres was kind of, you know, flawed in previous gens is that it was hard-walled by any rock type ever. It just didn't get any coverage unless you're running Power Herb, Solar Beam, or you're on a Sunny Day team or something like, or like on a Sun team. You were hard-walled by it. But now you can pepper those things with Scorching Sands and either do a lot of damage or beta burn on them and slowly chip them down that way. And with sub roost sets, that's honestly a very, very viable option. And you know, Flamethrower, sub roost, Scorching Sands can be really, really obnoxious to deal with. It also gets access to U-turn, which I think is really, really cool. Like I said, reliable recovery. It gives us a decent speed tier in 90, which I don't think we had up to this point. We had extra, you know, sitting there pretty close to it, but you know, not right on top of it. So I think that's obviously really nice. And yeah, I'm really excited to use Moltres. It's a mon. It's actually, I think, the only mon on this team that I have never used up to this point. Yeah, so this is gonna be our first and only, like, you know, new toy, I guess, on the team. But just looking at the mon, I can tell it's a mon I'll really enjoy. I enjoyed Talonflame and GDL, and I'm sure I'll enjoy Moltres. It's slower, but it's 10 times better, and I think it offers a lot of value to this team in particular. Round 7, we had to secure that sand, and that's going to be Gigalith. The reason I went Gigalith over Tyranitar, and Hippowdon. So with Tyranitar, it was honestly just the price. I think T-Tar is an amazing Pokemon. It would have given me a Dark type and a bunch of stuff like that, but I just didn't have the points for it. I would have ended up with 2 points for, like, you know, all the rest of my mods, and I just didn't think that was in my best interest because there were still a lot of roles I needed to fill, and I had a certain plan in mind in order to do so. Now, the reason I went it over Hippowdon is, one, again, the value. Hippo is very expensive. This is a John Jr. League, and that dude is the biggest Hippo stan of all time. So it's definitely pretty expensive here. And also, I don't like doubling up on grounds if I don't need to. There are some grounds that I like doubling up on, you know, when I have one of them, like a Zygarde or a what do you call it, or a Garchomp, you know, ones that are 4 times weak to something. I think it's nice to have, you know, a nice neutral ground to you know, potentially switch into those. Like, I love Zygarde plus Steelix. I think that's awesome. Or Zygarde plus, or Garchomp plus Steelix. I've done that a bunch of times. But with this, I didn't really want to grab an offensive ground and then a defensive ground, because they're going to be checked by the same things, whereas Gigalith isn't necessarily going to be a lot of the times. There's more so going to be checked by, you know, fat steals and stuff like that. And if I can play aggressive enough, I can always get in my extra on those things. But Gigalith can take on those steals itself. It gets Earthquake and Body Press to potentially hit those and chip those things down. I believe it also gets Superpower too, but I'm mostly going to be getting Earthquake or Body Press, just not lower my attack and stuff like that. Edges from this thing really hurt. It's really strong offensively too. It's a great tank, is what I you know, really like about Gigalith. It's gonna come in, it's gonna take a hit, it's gonna set up rocks, it's gonna, you know, come in again later, take one more hit, throw off a fat Stone Edge, throw off a fat Earthquake, maybe even explode on an opponent, which is obviously super dope. It gets access to Curse this gen, which is awesome. I've run Rest Curse sets, I think are very, very good. It gives me another good fire resist, which is obviously awesome, and, you know, some things like that. So Gigalith was just a great value pick in order to, you know, get us that sand core and kind of, you know, end off that and make sure that, you know, we aren't screwed and draft around a sand team, and so, or like, you know, a sand element, and then end up with like Hippopotas and like, you know, 2 points or 3 points or whatever it's at, or 1 point even. It's probably like 2 or 3. I doubt that we value, you know, low point sand that little, but probably 2. Regardless, I think Gigalith is a great fit for this team, and it's definitely my preferred sand center, at least. Let me know what you guys think, though, about that. If you would have preferred me getting T-Tar Hippo, but I think Gigalith was the move, personally. Round 8, we grabbed Scrafty. Now, what Scrafty does for us is it gives us our Dark type, which I think is really, really important. We kind of lost to any bulky Psychic ever with this team. If they end up setting up like an Iron Defense or something like that, it was honestly pretty tough for us to deal with. Like, Reuniclus kind of 6-0 this team on matchup if it got up an Iron Defense. There wasn't much we could do about that. Recording really late at night. I apologize. It's at 1:24 in the morning, but Scrafty gives me that option. It also gives me a nice Intimidate pivot. We do have Wish Pass to keep this thing healthy, so Assault Vest is obviously a really, really solid set. I had this thing in GDL Season 1. I actually really, really liked this low tier fighting, and it obviously gives us a fighting type as well. Another thing to break through steals, which is awesome for Latios. And it has, you know, potential great niche options, and not only like, you know, bulky Assault Vest sets where it can, you know, throw off big knockoffs and things like that, but it also has access to bulk up for setup, which is awesome to really bulk this thing up and get it really annoying for physical attackers. If you come in and you intimidate and then you bulk up again, you're set, and you can always drain a bunch off that damage pretty easy, which is pretty awesome as well. It gets Moxie as an ability, so, you know, maybe in some niche matches we could even run Dragon Dance as a set and go for that. It also gets Shed Skin, so we can, you know, run some rest variants and stuff like that in order to get some pretty semi-reliable recovery. And again, we do have Heal Bell support in the back, which is obviously really, really cool for Scratchy to make a funny face trying to keep back my yawn in this slide. But this is just a great low tier Dark that's, you know, going to be able to fill that role for us, give us a fighting type, give us a Dark, and help us not lose to the Reunicluses of the world right on matchup. Though they can hit us pretty hard with the Focus Blast, most of them Focus Blast. Hopefully not getting Dazzling Gleam, because Dazzling Gleam, you know, isn't too hot for Mr. Scraggy right here, or Scrafty right here. It's a very solid Pokemon nonetheless, especially for its point value at what? How much we get this thing for? 7 points. So yeah, I'll definitely take that any day of the week, and obviously great for us. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to round number 9. Round 9, we got Boots the Tangela. Now, if you look at my team right now, I do have a couple immunities. I do have some, you know, pivots and checks to grounds, being, you know, what, 2 Mons immune, and, you know, Jellicent being able to take on a majority of them. I didn't actually have a ground resist up to this point, and I figured Boots, the Tangela, was definitely my best low tier option. This thing is ridiculously fat. You see this thing take an earthquake, it looks like someone just like accidentally like, you know, jammed his finger, like bumped into him on the side of the street or something like that. Like, this thing does not take any damage from physical attacks, which is awesome. The Eviolite obviously buffing this thing like crazy. It's still decently strong in its special attack stat. What is it, packing like a 100? Yeah, still 100 special attack, which is nothing to scoff at. It's still going to be breaking subs and things like that. And that's a big thing with me. If you look at all my defensive Pokemon, they still put on offensive pressure in some way. I don't play well with passive Pokemon, and I don't think Tangrowth is one of them. Obviously, being able to hit things pretty hard from the special side at the very least. It does get access to cool utility moves. It can knock off items, and, you know, annoying pivots don't want to come in. Obviously, losing your item is very, very annoying, and Tangrowth is a great knockoff spreader. It also gets things like Leech Seed. It gets things like Sleep Powder to put some things to sleep and incapacitate them and, you know, be a general nuisance that way. It does get Synthesis, but we won't be running that too often, and it's a great regenerator pivot, and I love my regen mons. I love pivoting around, finding an opportunity to get in my breaker and an aggressive mid-ground play. Aggressive mid-ground. Did I just say aggressive mid-ground play? It is late, isn't it? I'm getting in my breaker and on like an aggressive double afterwards, and, you know, being able to not only do that and get that Pokemon in for free, but also heal up my regen mon as well. So I love Boots. Tangrowth is actually one of my favorite Pokemon ever to use in draft, and Boots is honestly no different. It's one of my favorite low tiers to use, and something I've had a lot of success with in the past, and I'm hoping that carries over here to NCP. Round 10 comes along, and if you look at my team, mine is Boots there back in round 9. When our team kills Bulky Waters, and even then, Boots doesn't kill a lot of Bulky Waters. A lot of them, honestly, with reliable recovery, can kind of just click Toxic and just Toxic stall it out, which is honestly really unfortunate. So I want something to immediately threaten those waters, and I ended up going with Xurkitree. Xurkitree is actually a mon I've had success with. I don't suck ass with Xurkitree. I'm actually pretty good with it. I've had success with it in the past. In a league, I think I went 17-3 with it, like kill death wise. It was a really fun mon to use. Now, obviously, that was back when Xurkitree had Tail Glow. Now, if you don't know, in Sword and Shield right now, Tail Glow is not a move. It is completely snapped from the game. If you bring up a Xurkitree from your Gen 7 game and it has Tail Glow on it, it will not let you click it. No matter what, it just was not programmed into the game, which is a shame, because that's one of the things that made Xurkitree honestly such a great underrated threat. Another being Z moves. Z Hypnosis was a very big thing for Xurkitree, boosting its speed and potentially putting something to sleep, and then tail going and then killing everything, because you have a ridiculous special attack stat. What is this thing? 181? Isn't it just a special Kartana? 173. Doesn't matter. Still really, really strong. But even with those nerfs, and don't get me wrong, Xurkitree is definitely worse than it was last gen. Definitely worse. That's why it was cheaper here, which is also really, really cool. It still is a very good Pokemon. It gives me a momentum and Volt Switch, so we're kind of, you know, getting a little bit more momentum on the team. Right now, it's kind of just Moltres and Xurkitree, which is unfortunate. And Latios. Latios got Baton Pass as a TR, which is, you know, big to mention. And Sylveon, I guess. So we got a little bit. And obviously Scolipede too, but I can't run that because that's passing stats. We're getting time back. It gives me a Volt Switch, which is obviously awesome to gain momentum, and it is a ground type that can hit. I mean, it is an electric type, God, it's late, that can hit grounds, and I think that's incredibly important. If you're going to draft an electric type, it needs a way to hit those grounds. You cannot be hardwalled by an entire typing, especially when that typing is probably one of the most important when it comes to formulating a good, proper team in a draft setting. And I think that's really important that Xurkitree can either Energy Ball or Grass Knot them. We get Dazzling Gleam for dragons, we Thunderbolt and Volt Switch on everything else, and we break holes in teams. We also get access to Calm Mind for setups while that's no Tail Glow. It's definitely an option. Something I've been kind of thinking and toying around is like a potential Endure set with Salic Berry. I think that could honestly be really cool, kind of like a scuffed Hypnosis, Z Hypnosis set, or even, you know, some Blunder Policy shenanigans. I'm feeling extra crazy, but I think Xurkitree is honestly an amazing Pokemon, and it's very, very slept on because it is very mediocre bulk wise. It has a pretty mess speed tier, but it can hit hard, and in the right matchup, some teams will just lose to Xurkitree, and I love my wall breakers like that, and I think it's a mon that I'll honestly do really well with if I do, you know, play correctly and stuff like that. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into our round 11 pick and round off this draft. Lastly, we picked Stoutland. Now, Stoutland gives me a couple things. It gives me something else to take advantage of my sand. Right now, it's only Excadrill, and I wanted something to, you know, at least benefit from it, and Stoutland definitely does so, and obviously getting Sandrush, but I also wanted a ghost immunity. Now I have Scrafty to take on most ghosts. Gigalith can take on most of them as well. Sylveon even to an extent as well, depending on the ghost. But Stoutland gives me a full immunity, so at least Mons aren't going to be running Spec Shadow Ball and Scarf Shadow Ball versus me. Just trying to chip down my Scrafty to where they can win in the end game, which I think is really important in all honesty. I think Stoutland's really cool in that sense. It also gets Intimidate and Scrappy, which are two also very good abilities. I've definitely, brought in bulky Stoutlands with Intimidate and like Rest Talk before in the past, which I think is really important. And obviously the Sand Rush option. Now, Stoutland did get a little bit nerfed in No Return. Basically, its best normal step is going to be Facade pretty much right now, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is also nice because it guards us against burns and stuff like that. And, sorry, having decreased damage output right there. Another cool option that it gets is going to be Retaliate. Now, Retaliate's a cool move that on the turn after a Pokemon that you have has been, knocked down or something like that, Retaliate does double damage. So if we sack off our Gigalith, we bring in our Stoutland and we click Retaliate, a lot of the time we're going to just be able to pick up KOs, which is awesome. It gets Crunch for Ghost when you're not running Scrappy. It gets Fire Fang and Superpower for the Steel types of the worlds and the Rock types, those normal resistant immunities. It's obviously really nice coverage. It gets Play Rough. It gets, I think it gets all the elemental things if I'm not completely tripping, but Stoutland's a pretty good Mon. It's not a Mon that's going to come all the time, but he's a good boy, and he's going to do really well in certain specific niche matchups, and that's all you can really ask out of, your lower pointed Mons and stuff like that. And I'll definitely take, I think we got great value out of this draft, but that's going to be the team. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I personally absolutely love this team. I want to give a big shout out to my front office for helping me out a bunch with this. Meta Knight obviously helped me out a bunch. Big Mouth helped me out a bunch with this one. Darkrai helped me out. Liv helped me out. Jay and John obviously helped me out a bunch too. Kirby, a bunch of people really went on this. And if you help me on my thing, Fran of course helped me out a ton too. So, and if I forgot to mention you and you helped me out, I really do appreciate you. There's just a lot of people that were helping me, and again, I'm eternally grateful. I really do appreciate it. If you want to join my front office, or just kind of it's my front office, but it's also kind of like a hangout server for those of you guys that enjoy my content and want to interact with me more. There is a link to that in the description, as well as all of the coaches. Please go check them out. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like. If you haven't dropped a sub already, please do so. Just click of a button, super easy. And yeah, with that being said, I will see you guys next week for week 1. Later.